Hello, my name is Debra Panetta, and I'm here with Selectman Michael Serino, Town Meeting Member Peter Manoogian, Town Meeting Member Bob Long, and Chairman of the Finance Committee, Kenny Depatto. We thought it was important to have this roundtable discussion to talk about question number 1, forming a charter commission in town. There's a lot of miscommunication, and we thought it would be very important to try to alleviate some of the concerns that we've heard from people regarding the Charter Commission and what that actually means for our town of Saugus. We're trying to eliminate some of that confusion. We really wanted to have this to be a live call-in, but we just don't have the technology here at the SCTV studio. So we do have an email address, sauguscharter@gmail.com. So if you do have any questions during this presentation, please send them in and we'll try to address them. I would first like everyone to please introduce themselves. Selectman Serino, please.
Thank you, Deb. I'm Mike Serino, Board of Selectmen. I've been involved in town government for many years. I was first elected to town meeting in 1975. I was chairman of the Board of Assessors. I was chairman of the Conservation Commission, and I'm finishing up my 14th year on the Board of Selectmen. And I was also vice chairman of the 2009 town meeting charter committee. Bob Long was the town moderator at the time, and he formed the committee. And I hope to answer all your questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Peter.
Hi, my name's Peter Manoogian, longtime town meeting member, Precinct 10, former selectman, former chairman of the Finance Committee, former chairman of the 2007-2009 Charter Commission, and have served on numerous boards and committees of town meeting. I look forward to this process this evening, and hopefully residents that have questions will be given our best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Bob.
Hi, Bob Long, town meeting member presently from Precinct 9, but I'll be moving over to Precinct 4 with the next election due to redistricting. But I'm kind of a student of town government and have been since I delivered newspapers in East Saugus many years ago. And I've been involved now in town for about 45 years. Mike beats my town meeting record by about 4. But I've been a selectman for 4 years, chairman of the planning board for 5, town meeting member for 35 plus, town moderator for 18 plus. And it's something I truly enjoy, and I enjoy our form of government. And when we get into that, I'd like to cover some of those issues that we presently have with the current form of town government.
Thank you, Bob. Kenny.
Hi, my name's Ken Depatto. I'm chairman of the Finance Committee. I have been for 10 plus years. I've been on the committee for 22 plus years. I'm a financial guy, business owner. I'm not a politician. I've never run for anything in politics, but I felt strongly about running for the Charter Commission because I know that if we change to a different form of government, there could be significant impact on the finances and the financial stability of this community. During the process, I will give some examples about that, and I'm hoping that you all follow me through on that. And please keep in mind that any information that I am disseminating to you tonight and previously is all factual, it's not opinion, and it's public information and public knowledge, and it can easily be corroborated either through town government, through state government, or on the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. My name is Debra Panetta. Currently, I serve as vice chairman on the Saugus Board of Selectmen. Prior to that, I was chairman. I've been on the board now for 12 years. I'm also the president of the Saugus River Watershed Council. I served on the last Charter Commission along with Peter as vice chairman. That was 2007 to 2009. I was also the chairman of the Saugus School Committee, as well as a 10-year, 5-term town meeting member representing Precinct 5. I'm also a member of the Saugus Business Education Collaborative, Historical Society, SAVE, Women's Guild, Garden Club. I served on the Master Plan Advisory Committee, served as secretary on the Cliftondale Revitalization Committee, and secretary on the Family-Owned Apartments Committee. I've just been on many different committees and commissions over the last 30-plus years, and I truly love our town. So thank you all for your introductions, much appreciated. We're going to go right into our first round of questions. And my first question is to you, Bob, and I want to thank you for pulling this together. It's very much appreciated.
I'm glad to see everybody here. I think it's very necessary for the town to hear this and see it. So, with that, go ahead.
Thank you. You have about 45 years of experience in elected positions in Saugus, where you were the moderator for 18-plus years. Can you please tell us what are the benefits of town government?
Okay. Actually, I wrote these down, and they come right from our town charter. And that, just very simply, as the charter states, that all town meetings must be public, and that any member of town meeting will receive no compensation, that any registered voter may speak at any of our town meetings, and the bylaws specify how much time a voter would have on any of the subjects that come up at town meeting. To me, town meeting is truly the people's body. It's the widest elected body in town, 50 town meeting members. And the moderator appoints the finance committee, as Kenny is well aware, because I appointed you a couple of times.
That's right.
And anyway, what's not covered by the charter is covered in the town bylaw. And if bylaws don't cover it, Robert's Rules, the latest edition of Robert's Rules, serves as a guidance. If it's omitted, whatever the details are, if they're omitted in the bylaws. Financial articles come from the Finance Committee after its public hearings. And they are the first order when we come to town meeting and a financial article comes up. It's the Finance Committee's recommendation that is the first order of business on the town meeting floor. Bylaw changes are initiated and have to be approved by the town meeting. Zoning changes, which require a 2/3 vote. And in recent years, this has proved to be so important to the town that zoning bylaws require a 2/3 vote of the body. And that any special committees that are created by town meeting would be appointed by the by the moderator rather, or if the article dictates otherwise, it would be appointed. Usually the committees have contain members of the town meeting, board of selectmen, school committee, and members of the public. And those meetings are public meetings, and they, the minutes are kept and filed with the town clerk, as it is with town meeting. So that's that part of it.
Well, thank you very much. I attended all 3 of the Charter Commission forums that were held by the advocate, Mark Vogler. And the common theme is that many of the people running for election for Charter Commission want to elect a town manager. I know, Mike, that you've done quite a bit of research on whether this is even plausible, and if there are any other municipalities in our Commonwealth that have an elected town manager. Can you please share that research with us?
Thank you, Deb. Yeah, as most of you know, I did an op-ed in the newspaper about 2 months ago regarding that issue. And no, you can't elect the town manager or the top position, whether you want to call him a town manager, a town administrator, or a mayor. That top position, if you want to elect that top position, you cannot retain the selectmen in town meeting form of government. So you have to go to a city form of government. Massachusetts has 351 communities. 59 are a city form of government. 292 have a town form of government. And that, like I said, there is no town form of government out of the 292 communities that have an elected town manager. And there's nothing in Mass General law that allows for you to have an elected town manager with a town form of government. You have to go to a city form of government. And I do have an article from the newspaper, local newspaper from Michael Ward. He's the director of the Edward Collins Center for Public Management at UMass in Boston, and I'd just like to say a quote, what he said. Michael Ward, the director of the Edward J. Collins Jr. Center for Public Management at UMass Boston, said in his view and the view of other experts at the center, doing so while maintaining the other structures of town governments, like a board of selectmen and town meeting, would be impossible if you wanted to elect a town manager. So what this would mean if you decided to change to a city form of government, you would lose your 50 town meeting members, you would lose your 5 selectmen, and you would replace it with a 9-member city council. The results of that, changing a town to a city, your budgets that now require 26 votes from town meeting would only require 5 votes from a 9-member city council. Zoning that now require 34 votes from our 50 town meeting members would only require 6 votes out of a 9-member city council. So I honestly believe that town government is the closest to the people, and more residents are involved in the decision-making process, which provides for the greater transparency and accountability in town government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I believe I heard from some Charter Commission candidates that another reason why they were running was because they were interested in staggered elections. Staggered elections does not need a Charter Commission to be put on the ballot. In fact, in 2016, it was put on the ballot. It did fail 53 to 47%, but the town, again, the selectmen can put that on the ballot at any time. So thank you very much, Michael. Peter, you were the chairman of the last Charter Commission. I was the vice chairman at that time, from 2007 to 2009. Can you explain the process, how many meetings were had, the cost associated with the Charter Commission, just to give people a flavor of what that process is all about?
Yes, the process, thank you, Debbie. The process is spelled out in Mass General Law, Chapter 43B, and it is quite prescriptive as to what you have to do, when you have to do it, how you have to do it. And the law was written basically in 1978, and they realized there would be costs associated with having a charter commission, and the state government, the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, provided for a $5,000 appropriation, automatic, for any charter commission. Well, in that same year, gasoline was about 95 cents a gallon. So what this requires, and what it required in 2007, was for us to seek an appropriation from town meeting. At that time, it was $30,000 to supplement the $5,000 that the state mandates. And on top of that $30,000, we had 65 meetings. You asked about how many meetings, and that required a custodian in the town hall, 4 hours mandatory overtime for those 65 meetings. With that $30,000, you have to, we had to have clerical help, because you have to keep accurate minutes that you have to be filed on a timely basis. We had a treasurer at the time that monitored the expenditures. We used the money to pay the travel expenses of visiting guests, mayors, selectmen, moderators from other communities that we studied their forms of government. And you have mandatory publication in a newspaper, general circulation of your proposal that you have to get feedback on. That's quite expensive now. And then you had, at the end of the process, you had to mail the document, a 60, 70-page document, to every single registered voter household. And the cost of the postage and the printing and reproduction brought us up to that amount. So at that time, we spent about $45,000. Now, it's easily estimatable that a charter commission will cost the taxpayers $100,000 at a minimum. And you can take a look at what Framingham spent. I know the people are relying on Framingham's model, not only in their political process, but in how they're going to go about doing this. And Framingham had a vote yes committee to get the ballot question passed. and they hired the Collins Center, and the Collins Center quoted them, I believe it was $35,000 for 20 meetings, and every meeting after that would be $1,000 a pop to do it. So that's just for your consultant, because there's no way that you're going to write a charter, because you're basically talking citizens and lay people. There may be some that have experience in law or accounting or something like that, but they're not going to write this type of legal language that's going to withstand scrutiny and by the Attorney General. So you have to have a consultant, and the consultant is going to be very expensive. To give you an idea, I think you were on the master plan committee, Ms. Panetta. That cost up to $150,000,
Yep.
and they didn't have nowhere near the amount of public meetings that a charter commission is going to have. So voters should be aware, because that's a common question. Will this cost the taxpayers anything? Yes, it will. A minimum of $100,000, money that has to come from the town budget that obviously won't be available for anything else. Anyone that suggests that it's only $5,000, or we can do it ourselves, or something like that, or do a cut and paste from another community, would be a disservice to the process. So I hope that answers the question.
You did. Thank you very much, Peter. Ken, you've been the chairman of the Finance Committee for quite some time. Can you tell us how a different form of government would impact Saugus's finances?
Sure. I'll use 3 examples that I think and hope the townspeople are familiar with. I certainly know town meeting is familiar with it, and the Board of Selectmen and the school committee. One would be the budget, one would be borrowing, and the other one would be stabilization. Those 3 financial articles I'd like to comment on. The first one would be a borrowing article. So currently, any financial article, no matter where it starts, from an individual putting an article on the warrant, the Board of Selectmen, the town manager, whoever it may be, goes from them to the Board of Selectmen, put on a warrant, and then it goes to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee will vet that financial article. They will get backup documentation. They will make a recommendation, and it will go to town meeting. Town meeting's the appropriating body. There are 50 members elected throughout the community. That's a pretty good cross-section of the townspeople. So on a borrowing article, that requires a 2/3 vote of town meeting in order to be approved. So a lot of people think that the Board of Selectmen approve borrowing. They don't. They recommend the article to be okayed for borrowing, but it's town meeting that actually authorizes the borrowing, because they are the appropriating body. That would all change if there was a city or a city form of government. That would now be, as Mr. Serino said, from the Board of Selectmen, it would be a majority of 5 out of 9 people, rather than a 2/3 vote out of 50 people if they're all there, or 35 or 43, whatever it may be. The second one would be the stabilization fund. This is an incredibly important fund. Most people look at it as a rainy day fund. It's important to Standard & Poor's Global to know that we have stability in the community, that we're constantly putting money into stabilization. During the pandemic, we didn't have any reduction in services because the Finance Committee recommended borrowing money out of the stabilization fund in order to maintain a level of services that the taxpayers were accustomed to. But then at the end of the year, when we reconciled Article 2 and 3, we recommended putting that money back in there. That was well noted by Standard & Poor's. They commented that in the management letter, and they stated that Saugus is on good sound footing, they are using good practice, and they put the money back into stabilization. That also requires a 2/3 vote to come out and a 2/3 vote to go back in. Once again, if it went to a city form of government, it would be a 5 out of 9 vote. Would you rather have 5 out of 9, or would you rather have the majority of town meeting, which is a good cross-section of our community? And then, of course, the last one I'd like to talk about is the budget. That's the big one. Currently, our budget's over $110 million. You include water and sewer stabilization funds, it could be 120, 115, 120. I'm not exactly sure of that number right now. However, that budget is vetted at the floor of town meeting and voted on the floor of town meeting. And once again, it's the majority vote of town meeting. It's not a 2/3 vote, but it's a majority vote. But you have many different people asking questions about each individual budget. They sometimes ask the town manager, they'll ask the finance director, or they'll ask the chairman of the finance committee what was the thought process, what was the backup information and supporting documentation that was provided, etc. However, that budget doesn't get passed by 5 out of 9 people. It gets passed out of a majority of town meeting. And I ask the taxpayers again, do you have more confidence in a better cross-section of the community that's elected, or 5 out of 9 elected politicians? Thank you.
Deb, just to follow up on what Kenny said, I know you were on the board with me, Deb, when under the former town manager, we had a negative free cash.
Yeah.
I said, what's a negative free cash? I never heard of that before in my life. Today, under the current town manager, we have close to at least $20 million between stabilization and free cash. We have $20 million in our account, where we started off with 0 under the old town manager. We have a AA+ bond rating, the highest in Saugus's history. So under, this town manager, and I think the government's doing very well financially.
Can I pick
Of
up on
course.
this? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. People are saying, I elect a school committee. I can elect my board of selectmen. I can elect town meeting members. Why can't I elect the town manager? Well, first of all, as Mike points out, there's no such thing as an elected town manager. It's an oxymoron, because management implies that someone's going to have training and experience. For example, our current town manager has a bachelor's degree in management, a master's degree in criminal justice, a law degree, has taken numerous courses and certifications in procurement, and so forth. You could have someone that's an Olympic star, for example, who brings a gold medal back to Saugus, and that person could be very popular and become the elected manager, really a mayor. And that's wonderful. And that person's going to have to turn around and hire somebody to do the job that a manager does. Saugus went to a town manager form of government in 1947 because the selectmen, there were 3 at the time, we had the highest tax rate in the area, if not all of Massachusetts. And the public was very frustrated with the lack of administrative competence in the community. And there have been times, as Mike has pointed out with a previous town manager, that Saugus fell on hard times. But it really comes down to this. Many people own stocks in a corporation, and the corporation has a board of directors that you vote for. That board of directors, in turn, will hire a chief executive officer. And that's the way our government, we are members of a body politic, but we are part of a Saugus corporation. And each of us are stockholders in this corporation. And as my friend Kenny points out, that stewardship over those funds and over the taxpayers' resources has to take place with somebody that has administrative competence, training, skill, and so forth. And currently we have that. I would say to the public, if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. If your refrigerator's working, are you gonna take it apart? What is the problem? No one can articulate the problem. So, people should be careful when they consider this vote next Tuesday, because the train has left the station. This was talked about in December. They wanted a mayor. The person that came up with this idea wanted a mayor. He said it in this Saugus Advocate in December. He said it in the Lynn Item in January. He said it on WBZ radio shortly thereafter, that he wanted Saugus to become a city. There was pushback. The public doesn't like the concept of a city, so we'll elect a town manager. A rose by any other name is a rose. Just because you're changing the name doesn't mean you're not going to be a city. And people have to ask, okay, if we're going to have an elected manager, what are the selectmen going to do? You're gonna give out banner permits over Main Street. You're gonna allow block parties. What will your role be? Licenses? You know, what would the role be of the town meeting? Who would call the town meeting into session? So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't square. And people should hold those pushing this accountable. So,
Thank you,
Debbie,
Peter.
I'd like to say one thing
Of
going
course.
to what Mr. Serino said and Mr. Manoogian said in reference to negative free cash. So the general public will know that we, at the end of the year, when the Department of Revenue reconciles our books, we get a notice of certified free cash. Under the previous administration, we had negative free cash. Mike was right when he asked the question, what is negative free cash? Well, negative free cash really is that you have an operational budget with a structural deficit. And that's the big deal. That means that that town manager was running a budget that expenses exceeded revenues. He knew that. We didn't know that until that came out. But negative free cash really means a structural deficit in the operational budget. Under this current administration, as chairman of the Finance Committee, I can tell you that we have never had a structural deficit in any of our operational budgets at all.
Thank you, Ken. I just think it's important that we all remember back in the former administration when our library was closed. We all remember the Essex Street Fire Station opened, closed, because we did not have enough funding in our town. They were going to close the senior center, our youth and rec center. I remember going up into Boston, met with the Department of Revenue, and we were going to go into receivership. We were bankrupt. And that's when I became a selectman back in 2011. And we have done a complete 180 since that with this new administration, with the Finance Committee, town meeting, school committee, selectmen, everybody working together, communicating. And that's what our town is all about, working together for the betterment of all residents and not any special interests. But I am just so proud of how far we have all come from when I first got elected from where we are now. So I want to thank everyone. Yes, Bob?
I just wanted to add a couple of things
Please.
regarding town meeting. Just to point out very quickly, town meeting is nonpartisan. We don't have Democrat, Republican, or anything else on that beside our name on the ballot at all. So it's nonpartisan. Secondly, one of the best, what has really bothered me, I'm going to be straight on this, is my sense that there's a lack of understanding by some town meeting members and some members of the public of what we really have as a government on that. This is put out by the Secretary of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's the Citizens Guide to Town Meeting. And it talks about both our town meeting, which is a representative. We elect people from the 5 people from each precinct to an open. And a lot of the open town meeting has to do with the size of the community. And in the Commonwealth right now, you can't have fewer than 45 town meeting members. And I think you can have up to 240, something like that. But again, it comes back to your board, for example. Everyone has, I think, a misunderstanding of their board. Your board, by the charter, the town manager answers to you. He runs the government on a daily basis. You people really are the ones who give him direction on that. And I think that's important. And if you don't, if the direction is not something that the town meeting members appreciate or go along with, you'll certainly hear from them. I know that.
Absolutely.
So it's like I say, it's kind of having a much larger body of people examining what we do. And when it comes down to transparency and accountability, the usage of those 2 terms absolutely drive me up a wall. Because, they really do, because I don't think the people who are using them, one, understand them. Two, know how to go about, researching what they need to do. Every one of our committees, Finance Committee, Town Meeting obviously is open to everybody. So isn't FinCom, so
Right.
isn't the Planning Board. All of these committees are open to the public if they choose to go. It's only a body of people who choose not to research, to find out how the government operates, that seem to be having a problem with this. Or, in the case of a person's desire who wants to be an elected head of the government here, which would eliminate, as we've talked about, town meeting, you become a city council is really what you become. And you have a payroll. City councils don't, as we know from our surrounding community, they don't serve for nothing.
Right.
There's no, they serve, they don't serve without compensation. They expect it. They get it. I'm not sure of the other boards that they would have, like the Board of Appeals, the Planning Board, et cetera. But the cost of government tends to balloon than what it is right now. So, it's just throwing that in there.
I want to touch on two things. You're absolutely right regarding public comment. I know at our Board of Selectmen meetings, we have two public comments. We have one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end of the meeting. And Kenny, a question to you. We all talk about the AA+ stable bond rating from Standard & Poor's and how important that is for our town. But some people just don't understand what that means, even though it's saving taxpayers millions of dollars. Can you explain that, please?
Sure. There was a point in time before this administration, where the town of Saugus would go out and request bonding proposals from financial institutions. We'd be lucky if we got 3 institutions to say that they would loan us money, and at a much higher rate than other communities. Today, our bond rating is a AA+. We're just short of a AAA. And now when we go out to borrow money, when our bonding council goes out asking for money with a description of its use, et cetera, we'll get anywhere from what I understand, 12 to 15 different financial institutions that will bid to loan us the money. And the last time I remember I had asked a question about the interest rate we got, we went out for a bonding amount, and I'm not sure if it was we were bundling things together or if it was a straight bonding article. And I believe our rate came in at like 1.25 or 1.28 APR. Okay, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, of course, before the Fed started raising the benchmark. But that is a significant savings. So if we're getting a 1.3 or a 1.4, or whatever it may be, APR, and before we were getting a 4.7 or a 4.8, you figure out how much that money is that's costing the taxpayers, which means there's less money for the operational budget, less money to expand in the operational budget, less money for capital equipment, less money for capital improvements, less money generally all around. So the improved bond rating has significantly helped this community. And I say hats off to the administration, the finance director, the town manager, the finance committee for having good practice, town meeting for supporting it, and the Board of Selectmen. We all supported everything in that nature, and it's come back and it's given us great savings.
Thank you, Ken, for that clarification. Many changes in our charter can be made within town meeting, as we talked about earlier. Mike, I believe that you worked on quite a few updates to our current governmental structure, and Bob, I believe you worked with Mike on those. Can you please give us some examples of what changes you and others proposed and the process on how they were voted?
Yes, thanks, Deb. First of all, you do not need a charter commission in order to make changes to our current town charter. The process you can go by right now is the selectman or town meeting member or a town meeting formed a committee like we did in 2009 can propose changes at town meeting, If town meeting approves some changes, it has to go to the state legislature for approval, and then the governor must sign it. So these changes can be made in town meeting for mostly everything except for elections, staggered elections. If we want to change the elections or the number of selectmen, town meeting has to approve it, but it still has to go to the voters just for elections. So we can do that. And I'd like to go over some of the changes that we did under your town meeting charter committee in 2009 when you were town moderator, Bob. You formed our committee. Some of the changes were the Board of Selectmen are the chief policy makers. That was supported by town meeting 38-2. 5-year capital plan must be approved and updated every year. That was supported by town meeting 40-4. The school committee must submit their budget by February 1st. Before, they used to submit it at the end of the month, and that was sort of like the end of the budget process. So we moved it up to February 1st. I worked with Wendy Reed. She was chairman of the school committee at the time, and we worked on moving that budget date up so they get a shot at the beginning of the budget process, not at the end. And that passed town meeting 39-5. We did limit the town-wide public office, how many offices you can run for. And then the leasing of town property, as you know, there was controversy about cell phone towers being proposed at different ballparks in town. And the selectman at the time had no authority over leasing a property. It was solely the town manager. So we made a bylaw saying that the selectman would have to approve any leasing of town property. So those are some of the changes. So I want you to really make no mistake about this. The only reason you form a charter commission is to change your form of government from a town to a city. No other reason, and this is what's happening now. There is a proposal, and they want to change our town to a city. And what I would propose, in this charter commission proposal to change to a city, from a town to a city, it only divides the town. It doesn't help the town. I don't think this is good for the town. But what I would like to propose is that, after this whole thing is over, that we do make a proposal into town meeting to change our town charter to provide for a standing charter committee, which will review our charter every 3 to 5 years. I looked at most cities and towns, I looked at their charters, and most of them have that in there now. So I think this would be a good addition to Saugus to do something like this. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Mike. So, Bob, you talked a little bit about this earlier, changing from a town form of a government to a city form of government would have far less resident participation. Volunteer positions would become paid positions. Can you explain what a loss of representation means to Saugus residents?
Well, from my point of view, I mean, I've been in the same neighborhood now for many, many years. And people do know me, and that's, I think, was true with most of the town meeting members, that the people who live around them do know who they are and what their commitment is. I think it's a neighborhood touch is what it comes down to. You've got 5 people from one precinct alone. Like in my case, it was precinct 9. So you'd have people from the Golden Hills, from Main Street, from Oaklandvale, where I am. And there were good representatives out there in the community. What happens when you have a council? Who do these people now turn to? 4 or 5 people, maybe? Or maybe just one person from that particular area that they hope to get in touch with? For all these years, my telephone number has been available to anybody who wants it. And I would say that that's true of all the town meeting members. As a matter of fact, the town folks may not know it, but after an election, there is a list that is made up of all the new town meeting members and their phones, so they can be reached. And I would think that anybody who wants to obtain such a list could get it from the clerk's office. May put a little more stress there, but they seem to be very happy as far as giving out information to the community. They're from the community too. I think that's what we don't want to lose track of, that the the folks that we have right now are from the community. Going back to what Peter was talking about with an elected manager, cutting down on the pool of people who would be available to truly run a town, an organization like this, would be much smaller, if you have it at all.
One of the things that people need to be aware of is that all political campaigns require money. And we've seen on this particular campaign a tremendous amount of money flowing into the Vote Yes coffers. They've formed a ballot question committee, much like Framingham did. And if you look at the Framingham model that they seem to be following, the Framingham Vote Yes committee raised in 2015 or 16 $47,000 just to convince the voters to vote yes and form a charter commission. The two biggest donors to that, and corporations can make donations to that, the two biggest donors were people that wanted to build apartments and develop land. If you have an elected CEO, I don't care if you call it a manager or a mayor, whatever, that person's gonna have to campaign. That person's gonna have a committee. That person, in turn, will be the sole individual that will appoint members of a planning board, a conservation commission, and all your other boards. Right now, a town manager has to nominate someone to a planning board, and the selectmen confirm it. If it's one person that's putting people on planning boards, let's face it, Saugus is ripe for development between the businesses on Route 1 and the neighborhoods on both sides of Route 1. And town meeting has said no to proposals for more apartments until we see a plan of what you want to do. Town meeting and the planning board said no to more apartments and more development in Cliffordale Square density until such time as there's safety improvements, which are taking place now under a grant. But money is the mother's milk of politics, and the campaign finance reports were due today, and it'd be very interesting to see where the money's coming from to fund this yes campaign. You'll see many signs that'll say yes on one side and the name of the candidate on the other. Now, who's paying for that? Is the candidate paying for it, and is that a donation to the yes group? Or the yes group paying for it, and is that a donation to the candidate? Who knows? But follow the money. And if this is successful and they are able to form a charter commission, the money that they don't spend on this can then be rolled forward into the 2025 election, as it was in Framingham, to convince the voters to vote for city government. So, again, what's broken, Saugus? Tell me. I haven't heard it. Kenny's made a compelling argument for the finances in the best condition this town's ever had financially. We're the envy. We pay for our snow and ice in the year that the snow falls. How many years did we have to push it onto the tax rate in the following year?
I can't even tell you how many years. And
We
what
buy
that does is it
police
takes money
cruisers.
out of
on
everything.
4 cruisers, we buy them. We buy fire trucks, So I don't know what the problem is, other than, as Bob, you say, that this is vendetta politics. One person's out to get another person out of a job, and that's it. But yet, it's interesting that the selectmen have voted 4-1 in 2019 to renew the manager's contract, and 5-0 recently to extend the manager's contract. So I would think if they had a problem with him, there would have been no votes, but there weren't. So people should ask questions. You can email us your questions at sauguscharter@gmail.com, and don't be afraid to ask the question.
And Peter, I am glad that you mentioned that the town manager's last extension was voted in a meeting 5-0. All 5 selectmen voted to extend our town manager's contract. Bob?
Yeah, going back to what Peter was saying, though, who does an elected person, mayor or whatever you want to call them, answer to? Right now, the manager answers to your board.
Yes.
On a
He's
on a daily
required.
basis.
Yeah.
He's required by charter to be at your meetings on that. You folks are the ones who decide and present where we're gonna go. It's his mission to carry it out. And, or to report back to you what's being done or what hasn't been done. So, I mean, there's a control there. What do you do with somebody who's elected? And Peter, you make this very strong argument. Who does that person answer to?
The donors in Saugus, with the diminishment of voter turnout has gone from 6,000 people in an election down to 4,000 or even less. So when you have less people voting, all right, the people that are making the campaign contributions will have more of an influence on the electoral process, to buy ads in the newspapers, to buy flyers, mailings, and so forth. And we see it throughout our country, the influence of money. And in this particular campaign, a ballot question committee can raise money from corporations. It's no secret that over the last 2 weeks, Win Waste was doing extensive polling trying to gauge the popularity of you, of the chairman of your board, and of the town manager. If we have an elected CEO in the town of Saugus, a manager or a mayor, call it what you want, a host community agreement would be signed for more ash down there yesterday, just like it was done up in Haverhill by the Haverhill mayor, all right? So if you think the voters will have control, the donors will have control over the process of influence in the town. I prefer to have a board of directors that hire the CEO. Someone like a Jeff Ciccolini, who is he's an
CPA.
auditor.
He's a
an
partner
auditor,
in an
okay?
auditing
He's a
company.
finance guy. You know, Debbie's got financial background. Jeff has been a staunch supporter of the town manager in the financial process, and he can cut to the chase with the questions. And I know he participates at your meetings. Saugus is in the best financial condition it's ever been, but that can go down the drain real fast if you have an elected CEO that's beholden to groups that helped get that person elected. I've seen it. Look, how do you think Chelsea went down the drain back in the day? All right, because of that process of influence and campaign contributions. Look at Everett. Look at the development in Everett, Broadway. They tear down churches and build 5-story apartment buildings. I mean, that's what's going to happen in Saugus, because there's so much land between Indian Valley and Route 1, between Sanders Drive and Route 1, between Forest Street and Route 1, between Caddy Farm area and all that. So follow the money, folks.
Thank you, Peter. We touched a little bit about this, Kenny, but at the charter forums, the common theme that candidates wanted more transparency and accountability. There wasn't anything specific, I don't remember. I went to all 3 of the forums that they mentioned that they wanted to see more accountability or transparency. But can you tell us about our town government and talk about, do you believe it's transparent and accountable to the residents?
Yes, Debbie. Yep, that's the buzzword they like using, transparency. Sometimes it frustrates me because as a finance person and the chairman of the finance committee, I look at the transparency that occurs within our meetings and on the floor of town meeting and through town government on financial articles. There's never been more transparency in our community on financial articles as there has been in this administration. We used to have to pull teeth to try and get information out of the previous administration, and even then we couldn't even believe whether or not it was accurate or not. So with that being said, the example I would like to use, once again, is our town budget. Because I'm not real sure if the general public has a good picture of how that budget is put together. So what happens with the town budget is the finance director and the town manager gets together with his staff, along with the department heads, asking them to put together a budget for their department on what they think it's going to take to run their department for the next fiscal year. Once that's done, the manager will go through it with his finance director, fine-tune it, pare it down, and make adjustments. Then he gets it to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen review it. They go over it with the town manager. They ask questions. Sometimes they recommend making changes or increases or decreases, whatever it may be. And then it gets sent along to the Finance Committee. Then the Finance Committee holds meetings for more than 3 months. They're all public. They're all advertised. I advertise them not just, that we're having a meeting, but I put the agenda on there so they know what departments are going to be reviewed, and I don't review any other departments that haven't been advertised. So the Finance Committee will review and vet and ask questions of the town manager, the budget director, anybody he has brought in there as a consultant to give us information, and then we make our recommendation. Our recommendation is the recommendation that hits the floor of town meeting, and it's the one that town meeting takes up. They don't take up the manager's budget recommendation. They don't take up the Board of Selectmen's recommendations. It takes up our recommendation. So if we differ from either the town manager or the Board of Selectmen or both, it's our recommendation that town meeting will now entertain and vet. So now town meeting will ask questions on any budget that they want. They either want to get a clarification from the town manager, maybe a consultant that put together some information, or even the chairman of the Finance Committee will be requested to get to the podium and answer a question of one of the town meeting members. So, after all those questions are asked and answered and they're satisfied, they vote on a school budget, they vote on a town operational budget, and they vote on the water and sewer enterprise funds. I ask you, how much more transparency do you need? How many layers of that information getting out to the general public do you have? Well, let's count them. You have the town manager's budget recommendation. It's put online as soon as he turns it over to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen do their due diligence, and if they make any changes, those changes are made and they're put on. They're not only discussed in their meetings and voted on in their meetings, but it's put on a revised budget on the website, the town website. Then it goes to the Finance Committee. Then the Finance Committee makes their recommendation. It goes to town meeting, and town meeting votes it. So count them. Manager, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, town meeting. Those are 4 bodies of people that are reviewing an operational budget. To me, in the real world out there, in the public, the private sector, that's accountability. That doesn't even happen in the private sector. It goes from the CEO or the board of directors to the CEO to the CFO and the COO, and they implement policy. There's no input by anybody other than that. So I think we have tremendous transparency in the financial areas that you can't even improve upon. If we go to a city, as Peter states, okay, the transparency is diluted, and I mean it's diluted, because it goes from that elected official who is wearing that captain's hat, okay, out to all the departments, and this is the way we're doing it. So for my own, I would rather have the type of government we have now, where there's layers of transparency, layers of checking on things, layers of many questions that can be asked publicly, okay, and not behind closed doors, rather than having one person making those decisions.
Thank you, Kenny. Peter?
Again, this the elephant in the room. They keep hearing about the elected town manager, which is really a mayor, and at the end of the process, it would be a mayor with a council that they would propose, just like was proposed in 1983. Saugus went through this before, 15 councilors, an elected town manager, and it was shot down 57 to 43 at the polls. But, if we're gonna elect a town manager, and if the public wants to elect, why don't we elect the superintendent of schools? You know, I mean, our schools, in terms of student achievement, could improve. I mean, that's no secret. Why don't we elect the DPW director? Or how about the town clerk or the assessors?
Or public safety.
Public safety, you know, we could create a board for DPW, oversight of the DPW. We could create a fire commission. There's all kinds of ways to create more elected positions if that's really what the public wants to be able to vote. But I don't get that sense because voter turnout has been diminished tremendously in the last 2 decades. I think if there's better public education, such as hopefully what we're doing tonight, and there's a more concerted effort by the town meeting members to engage their constituents. Saugus Advocate has done a great job with these Saugus Over Coffee events. You know, perhaps the town meeting members themselves need to engage their constituents more. But at some point, citizens have a responsibility to become aware of what's going on in their government. That's the highest, most important position in government, is that role of citizen. So, you know, I think this is a false dichotomy about the idea of having an elected town manager and being able to elect the person that's making the decision. It's just a way to get away from that very distasteful response that was received back in January and February when the person proposed an elected mayor. And make no mistake about it, that's what they want. And many of them have already said it. So.
And thank you, Peter. If you don't have email, you could get the budget, you could go to Town Hall and get a copy of the budget as well in the different phases. So it is available to the public.
That's a good point, Debbie. Thank you for reminding the people that it is always available at Town Hall. There are people that don't have access to electronics, and or they just, you know, don't like using them. Thank you, Debbie. That was very good.
Thank you, Ken. Bob, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just jumping on what Kenny was talking about. Kenny, do you still receive in the budget books, the first budget recommendation is from the department heads? Do you still see that in the budget book?
No, we don't. But if we want, we can request them to come and go
They do
over
come.
their budget. They used to come for every one of them. It became a thing where, you know, their budgets are level funded. So, you know, to have somebody come, you know, to a meeting to defend a level funded budget, you're really putting them out of the way. Let's not forget that, you know, they don't get paid for that, and, you know, they want to go home to their family and everything. However, if there was a significant, you know, change in the budget, we would ask the manager, could you please have them? The DPW director is always there. Both public safety officers are always there. Okay, so, you know, yes, in that respect.
So the town meeting really sees the manager's recommendation, selectman's recommendation, finance committee's recommendation.
Yep.
Those are the three that they see.
Right.
It used to be 4, but I can understand having the department heads come in. In fact, I was often surprised when I used to see it way back when, that a department head would go against his boss.
Yep, and they would have to justify that. We would ask that question. But, you know, now the budget, when we get that, you know, that form on that spreadsheet, there is the manager's recommendation, the department head recommendation, management's recommendation, selectmen's recommendation, and then, of course, FinCom, because we are the last voters, and our recommendation hits the floor of
You're
town
a
meeting.
subcommittee of town meeting.
Yes.
That's really what you are.
So-
Town moderator appoints you.
The town moderator appoints us, you know, we're not elected, and, you know, if we don't perform to the level that, you know,
Wait a
town
minute, can't we
meeting
elect you?
expects.
We should add you to the list. We'll elect the
Yeah, we could be
finance guy.
elected too.
Let's elect yeah, right.
You wouldn't elect me, Peter, because I'm not a politician. I would have to bow
Well, if you
out.
got the right campaign contributions, you could get
If
some-
I got the
yeah,
right campaign card, because I'd be going to lunch every
You could
day.
get lawn signs.
Yeah,
I want to point out that the finance committee can only be a member of the finance committee and town meeting.
yes, no other committee.
And
I
s-
can't serve on any other committee.
And the same thing with the selectman can only be a selectman, the school committee can only be a school committee member, and the housing is the same way.
But what's really interesting is when I wanted to run for both selectmen and on Charter Commission back in 2007, I was told that I could only run for one or the other because of what the charter says. So it's interesting that today I can run for both, but I couldn't run for both back in 2007. It's an odd interpretation, and that's something I would want to change in the charter to clarify that.
Yeah, well, didn't the ruling come back is that the charter was different than the
Yes.
town office?
It is.
The state ruled on that it's completely different.
Yeah,
I see it as being a townwide
Similar.
office. I see it as being similar, so it's interesting. I find it's interesting. The other thing, we're talking about the budget, and you were talking about the different columns. There's also a year-to-date column, and they also show a few other years. So you're not just looking at numbers,
Right.
you have history.
We get historical data.
Over
of,
the
I think
years.
3 or 4 years, but I think it's 3 years.
3.
But if we ask for an additional year, because, there might, like, say in the 3 years, there was an anomaly. Like, sometimes you'll see some kind of a bulge, and you'll say, there had to be something driving that.
Right.
What was the driving factor of that number there?
Exactly.
And they will say, well, look, we'll show you over here. Or, we had to hire additional people, or whatever it may be. So, yeah, there's plenty of information out there for everybody. I mean, it's really transparent, the financial process.
Debbie, the late Dick Barry, who served on the Board of Selectmen, chairman of the school committee, town moderator for many years, he had a statement that the success of a town manager is visible on the town meeting floor. If it's like a dance. If they understand him and they support him, that's where he makes his mark. And this particular town manager, again, it's not about the individual, it's about the job, the position. If they
Right.
trust the town manager, the budget will go through. I haven't seen any controversy or opposition to the budgets that have been proposed by the manager and recommended by the finance committee. He has an excellent and it's been different town meetings. It's not like the same town meeting. There's been changes. 4 years ago, it was significant changes. So town meeting does support the budget. And on transparency, you've done a great overview of the financial transparency. I'm going to talk as a layperson. If I go into the town clerk's office, and when I research the minutes for the property that wants to put apartments
Up
up
on
on Forest Street,
Right.
I filled out a form like any citizen would fill out to the town clerk, Ellen Shenna, saying what I wanted. Yeah, come back in an hour, 2 hours, and we'll have it for you. The finance department under Wendy Hatch, fantastic. There's a woman in there, Maddie, that does the water readings for all the realtors in town. When they sell a house, they have to have a final. She's so responsive, these people. That treasurer's department is aces. Downstairs, inspectional services. If you need documents, just tell them what you want. You write it down. That's transparency from a citizen's point of view. Yeah, you don't have access to legal information if the town's embroiled in a lawsuit or something like that, nor should you. And by the way, the people talk about taking power away from the town. What power do you want to take away from the town manager? You want to take away the litigation authority? Do you want to take away appointing authority of town employees? That gold medalist that I said that would be very popular, that could be elected as a manager? Should that person have oversight over a lawsuit? And we have lawsuits going on. Essex Landing
Yep.
is an example. Biscayne Ave, a house up there. There's all kinds of lawsuits taking place. And do you want a layperson elected through campaign contributions and lawn signs to settle your lawsuits on behalf of the corporate body of Saugus citizens? I don't.
I think it's important to know that there is no committee on a no for charter committee, just like
Oh,
there's
yeah,
one,
please.
there's a moving Saugus Forward committee that we've heard about, but there's no committee, there's no committee. In fact, the no signs are being purchased by somebody not involved with politics at all, just
An elderly couple
that are
that's
just,
disgusted with what they're seeing.
I was going to say very concerned about
Yeah.
the government
Yeah.
and the charter, so yes. So thank you. Now, Peter, town meeting just passed an article where it needs now a 9/10 vote of the body to move a question. And I commend the town meeting for voting on this right to speak article. Can you explain what motivated you to put this article before town meeting, and what does that mean for our residents?
There was an article in November of, I think, 22, that was presented to town meeting that it was controversial. I won't get into the subjects, that's not important. But what happened was, there were many people out in the audience that wanted to be heard, both pro and con, that weren't able to speak because somebody made a motion to move the question. And that type of a motion procedurally is non-debatable. The moderator had to call the question at the time. There were people that wanted to be heard. Ironically, the person that was the deciding vote represented many of the people from the precinct that wanted to speak. And so, by one vote, the public was shut out from town meeting, and that was totally abhorrent to what town meeting is all about. So I put together a bylaw that town meeting adopted that says it's going to take a 9/10 vote to shut out the public, unless the moderator makes a determination that there's no one in the audience that wants to speak. So it really compels the moderator to assess the audience to see if there's anyone else that wants to be heard. And if there is, it will take a 9/10 vote to shut out the public. So it's called right to speak, and it's now in effect.
Yes, and I thank you very much for putting that forward, town meeting, and I want to thank all the town meeting members for voting on that. With that said, we are going to take a very brief recess, but we'll be right back. Thank you. Good evening. We're back, and my next question is to Peter. Peter, there's some of the candidates candidates for the Charter Commission are saying, we just want to study. What is wrong with just a study? Can you answer that for us, please?
Well, first of all, as Mike Serino has pointed out, you don't need a $100,000 plus 2-year Charter Commission process to do a study. If citizens want to study, that can be accomplished through town meeting. And I might say, an article for town meeting can require more public hearings than are required under Chapter 43B, which only requires, I believe, 3 mandatory public hearings. Town meeting can specify that there should be at least 10. And citizens could outweigh the elected officials on that type of a committee. The process can take place without the restrictions of Chapter 43B that require expensive newspaper advertising, publications, and so forth. There's ways to communicate, especially in the electronic age, what the document would be proposed. You know, one of my favorite sayings, quotes, is from James Madison. It says, "The government is the greatest reflection of human nature, and if men were angels, no government would be necessary." What Madison said there, and that was in Federalist 48, is that, you know, no government is perfect. There's always going to be flaws. The governments need to evolve and change and reflect what's taking place in a community. But in the instance here, as Ken Depatto has pointed out, the financial condition of this town should not be taken for granted. The public should be aware. We've got one of the best tax rates on the North Shore. We have the lowest water and sewer rates. You know, I still cringe when we have to vote them, but they're still highly competitive. And people that come here from Revere and Malden and Melrose can't believe it, what our rates are. And town meeting has good stewardship over that. So a study can take place, but it need not cost $100,000 plus and 16 months and more campaigning and all of this divisiveness. People can come together and study internally, but look behind all the signs and see what's behind the signs, and why are they all so similar, and where is the money coming from? You don't need all that to do a study. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Ken, If we become a city, would Saugus get a larger allocation of state funding? Because I've been reading, if we became a city, we'd get all sorts of extra money. Is there any truth to that?
No, that's not necessarily true, because between the state and the federal government, who are the two dolers out of funds, whether it's grant money or whatever, they have a very complex equation or algorithm in which they input data, statistical data, that determines what a community, whether it's a town or a city, gets. One of them is the demographics of a community. I'm just going to mention 3 of the important ones because I don't know them all, because as everything is in government, it's very complex, this equation. But one of them is demographics of a community. The second one is the income level of the community, the average income level as a cross-section of the community. Then the third one is, that I know of, they use is poverty level. How many people we have on poverty level status? Food stamps, SNAP, all those programs. Right. They put all that information together into an equation, and then they compare you to other cities. And I ask you, are we going to be in the same position statistically as Lynn, Chelsea, Fall River, Worcester, Springfield, Malden, Revere? I can go on and name a lot of communities that are cities that have a much broader crosscut of the things that they use to determine who's going to get the lion's share of the money. So the answer to that question is, you're not going to get what you think you're going to get. We get some favorable money from the state, not great. But, for example, how do we know, who's going to be moving into the community and who's going to be moving out? We don't. Things could change. Right now, we have a good cross-cut of people. We have 27%, from what I understand from the school department, of a good cross-cut of those types of taxpayers or residents. But that could change. That could go down. People could move out and go to a different community, move to another state. So, no, Debbie, that's not necessarily true. Because, as you know, and everybody should know, government is really creative when they put together these, requirements and equations on determining those factors. And already on 3 of those factors, I don't see us faring too well with that.
Ken, I have to absolutely agree with you. Back earlier this year, I got a phone call from the Boston Globe. John Layla wanted me to do the town side on a he said, she said, because the he said wanted a city, and I guess the she said was me, and I wanted a town. And I did an awful lot of research, and you're absolutely right. Our demographics aren't nearly as diverse as our neighboring cities. We have a smaller population, and our income per capita is significantly higher. So looking at all of those facts, when they're looking at a pool of money, I don't think that Saugus is going to fare well. So thank you, Kenny. Bob.
Yes.
The YES team, the Moving Saugus Forward Committee, they keep stating that the town manager has too much power. Do you believe that the town manager has too much power? And if you do, what powers would you take away? And then coupled along with that, if we went into a city form of government, wouldn't a mayor have more power than a town manager?
Oh, absolutely. Let's start with what I want to see taken away. Mm-hmm. Really nothing, okay, at this point in time. Be very frank about that. The charter clearly outlines what the responsibilities are of our present town manager form of government, okay? He does supervise and runs the town on a daily basis, does the hiring, firing, purchasing, etc. The only one that can really sign contracts is him, really. All this talk about the marijuana and everything, I don't know why it's going on, because he's the person who in the end have to negotiate whatever it comes down to. because he can sign the contract
Post-agreement, yeah.
on that. I think the fact that he has a responsibility to answer to a 5-member board, I think that's an important point to make, because as a mayor, does a mayor really answer to a council? Or does the council pretty much go along with the mayor? As was pointed out earlier, follow the money. You know, he who has the gold, has, you know, the golden rule is that, I think that's probably more or less what you'd see here in Saugus. Right now, we're kind of at a critical point in our community's history here. Are we going to remain a town, or are we going to be a city, is what it comes down to. We have some undeveloped land, and right now, as what Peter was pointing out, recently we had the chairman of your board sponsor an article to rezone some residential property to business so that a road could be brought in behind some buildings over on Forest Street, the residents, and so they'd be looking down onto Forest Street. People who had sunk a lot of money into their homes. It's an investment. Most of us in Saugus, our homes are an investment, is what it comes down to. So I think a manager is responsible, a mayor not necessarily responsible to the electorate like the manager is. People say, oh no, he's out of reach. No, he's not out of reach. He's not out of reach of your board on that. He's not out of reach of the finance committee. He's not out of reach of town meeting, for that matter, because he has to go before them and explain if he's making a proposal different than FinCom and he wants a change, he has to go before that board. He has to go before FinCom. But I mean, by the way, and the one thing I do want to point out is that the manager and the town meeting really don't vote anything to the school committee other than the bottom line budget. But the school committee does come into your committee and make a presentation as to what they're looking for.
Exactly.
They also have to go before you and the selectmen, the manager, and point out what they're proposing in their budget and why they're doing it. So we have a number of controls here that would, well, let me put it this way, they would vanish, judging from, the personalities that might be involved if we were to have an elected manager or an elected mayor. Elected manager is the same as an elected mayor. So, I don't think I would change much of anything. I like the setup that we, I like the setup that we currently have and the controls that are there. So,
Thank you.
In regards to, Chair, if I may, a citizen said to me the other day that there's something about the feel of a town that's different, that whether you look at the town hall and Appleton's pulpit or some of the landmarks and areas of this town, our wonderful neighborhoods, people like the feel of a town. Yes, we're a cut-through. We're getting overrun with traffic. We're just north of Boston, the first town just north of Boston, and we're experiencing some of those pressures. I understand that. But in spite of that, we are adapting and recognizing the challenges, and we have government in place that can meet those challenges more rapidly than if you have someone that's got to learn about the process, that has no educational background, no experience on the job, just won a popularity contest and collected a lot of money from developers and incinerators.
Thank you, Peter. My last question this evening is to Mike. Mike, we've already established that many changes can be made within our current town government. Is there anything else in the charter that you would like to see updated?
No, like I said earlier, Deb, and to the public, I would like to see a standing, written up in our charter, standing charter committee to review our charter every 3 to 5 years. I think that committee in the charter would be mostly experienced people, whether it be some selectmen, some town members, right now, there's a lot of people running for charter commission on, proposing a change to the charter. I don't even know who they are. No, really, honestly, I don't know who they are. I've never seen them before. They've never been involved in town government. And they want to run for this office and change our charter. I think it's dangerous, quite frankly. But, and I think like you said, Bob and Peter, that, with the town charter committee, you could have more meetings, there would be more transparency, changing our charter. But right now, I think the town's in great financial shape. I don't see why we need to change the town to a city. And I think this is only dividing the community. I don't think it's good for the community, and I just hope it gets shut down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I do agree with you. A lot of the people that are candidates for the Charter Commission have not been on boards and commissions before.
And it's nothing about them individuals personally,
I'm glad to see
know.
people step up. It's exciting to see new people get involved with our town. We're always asking for volunteers for our boards and commissions. And I hope that the folks that aren't elected or that want to get more involved with the town do go on boards and commissions and
run for town meeting.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, the more representative that we have, the more residents that are involved, the stronger our community will be. Together, we are definitely stronger. So, for closing remarks, I'd like to start with Ken, please.
Okay. I've repeated this at the forum. I put it on my political announcement. And going to what Mike has said, I'd like to repeat it again. As Peter said, what's broke with our charter? What's broke with our town? What's broke with our community? I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out myself because as far as I know, the financial breadth of a community is its lifeline. So if our finances are terrific, then our lifeline is terrific, which means the people are being given the things that, they desire. So let's look at it. And I was called out on this on one of the ads that the Yes Committee put together. And they're not being truthful because I'm not lying when I say that we have a state-of-the-art high school, middle school, reconfigured 2 elementary schools, new tennis courts, new basketball courts, reconstruction of Lincoln Ave, reconstruction of Hamilton Street. We've totally rehabbed our sewer system.
Pump stations.
Yep, all our pump stations are up to date. They were at end of life. The end of life was 35 years for these pumps. They were on 45 years, for crying out loud. They're all brand new. We're in great standing there. We've done a significant improvement to our water system and our pipes where we're saving money. We're locating leaks and we're fixing them so that we're not paying for water that we're not using. Let me see oh my God. I mean, some of the things here. So what's broken? That's my question. The people are getting what they want. They want good communities, good services. Like I say, during the pandemic, we didn't lay off one single employee. Rather, we probably hired 1 or 2 because it was necessary, okay? That was duly noted. When a global financial institution like Standard & Poor's notes that in the management letter, that's really meaningful. That's something. They're saying this community is doing the right thing. They're living within their means. They're providing services to the community. They're not cutting services. And by the way, our levels of police and fire employment have never been at higher levels in the history. We now have a captain on every single apparatus that goes out in response to anything. We never had that when I first got on FinCom. Maybe it was like that before I got on FinCom, but not when I was on FinCom. We just ordered a brand new pumper truck and a brand new ladder truck. That's $3 million. All these things are being financed through the existing tax rate. We haven't gone to the people and asked them for a debt exclusion outside of the tax levy. We are paying for everything within our means. The financial institutions recognize that. Why do you think we're getting such great interest rates? You know, so I'd like to just close saying, I'd like someone to say, what's broke with the system that we have now financially? I don't know. And I think if you ask a resident, the first thing that they're concerned about is the financial stability of a community. Are we going to have layoffs on police, on fire, you know, on DPW, in the school department, whatever it may be? That's what they want to know. That's the first thing they ask. No, we're at full service levels. Thank you. And I ask everybody, excuse me, to please vote no, because I just don't believe it's in the best financial interest, in the best interest of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Bob?
Yeah, excuse me. I mean, I go back a long ways. Like my members across the board here have spent the time and years here involved in local government. And what I'd like to see is not a change in local government. What I'd like to see is a participation of new citizens showing up, volunteering for our committees. It has been rather I mean, I understand people have a very busy schedule today, working at home, and going into town, whatever it is, involved in other activities with their children. But the lifeblood of this community is the people who volunteer. And I'd like to see that increase and improve. The method of running for a selectman used to run through town meeting. That all the time, you would go to town meeting first, serve some time there, terms, whatever. Then, once you got to know the government, you would run for the Board of Selectmen. So I don't see that now. I know we have a couple of people running for the Board of Selectmen who have no prior knowledge in town government. I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying, if you don't know what is broke, how are you going to fix it? If that's the way it comes down to, you know, to quote Peter over there, it's really comes down to that. I would like to see people come forward if they have certain expertise, such as for the planning board, or for the Board of Health, for Board of Appeals, whatever. Run for town meeting. Join up is what it comes down to. Just join us. And let some of us older guys.
You know, the Mass Municipal Association put out a video some time ago, several decades ago, saying the best-run communities in Massachusetts have one thing in common: citizen participation. The more citizen participation, the better government you have, regardless of the form of government. My concern is, with diminished participation, the opportunity for a charlatan to take over. That's my concern. And I've seen it in history. I taught history. You go back, that's the demagogues, that's where they come from. But, you know, I see a Charter Commission candidate in the audience, Sue Palumba, town meeting member. Her husband said something to the other night, said, I remember when I took my daughter to the library when she was in middle school, and she couldn't get a book because they closed the library. They slammed the door in the face. They tried to get a book out of wait for a book report. She was in middle school. And they couldn't get a book. People remember that in Saugus, what we went through when they shut the library down for no good reason, because the people voted against an override. Don't forget, public, you know, I see people complaining about things like weeds on the rail trail. Imagine that. We're going to change the government because we got weeds along the rail trail. I mean, that's what's out there. Now, I don't know if that's reflective of the public at large, but people forget the Essex Street Fire Station closing, the lack of manpower on the police department, the library situation. You know, we remember, and we don't have a trash fee. Town meeting put forth an article, you can't have a trash fee in this town without a vote at town meeting. Up in Danvers, the CEO, that manager, is putting it in $200 trash fee
$200.
unilaterally without any vote. But in Saugus, town meeting said, no, you're not gonna have a trash fee without our vote. So I think the job's been done and done well, and people should really gauge their vote in what's behind it on Tuesday.
Thank you, Peter. Michael?
Deb, thanks, Deb. I hope people vote no, I really do. I think the town meeting form of government is the purest form of government that we have. Right now, we have 50 town meeting members, 5 selectmen, so you have 55 people representing 28,000 Saugus residents. With a city form of government, you have 9 city council people and a mayor representing 28,000 people. You know, like I said earlier, I think we should go with the proposed town meeting charter committee written up in our town charter, because I think you'll get experienced people in looking at our charter and wanting it to change it versus some inexperienced people. And another reason why, I mean, why, like we said earlier, why fix it if it ain't broken? I mean, financially, we're in great shape. $20 million in our reserve accounts, AA+ bond rating, new schools, parks, playgrounds. I don't see that the town government's
What
broke.
about the weeds?
Please.
It's funny, as we all
We could
worked
get a
so
couple of
hard.
goats.
And just to finish up, you know, like it was said earlier, the town manager reports to the Board of Selectmen on a daily basis.
Yes.
An elected mayor would only report to the residents every 4 years.
Right.
You know, so
But to
I
the
just,
donors all the time.
you know, I just hope you vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, and I remember how hard we worked on that bike rail trail, which I'm really thrilled that we have here in Saugus.
What about the weeds?
We'll take care of the weeds. I thought you were gonna go out there. That's your new rule on Saturdays and Sundays. Saugus is financially stable. We're making great headways with capital improvements, and we finished our master plan, which outlines our vision for the next 15 years. This is an exciting time to live in Saugus, and I'm proud of our town. And I also don't see that it's broken. I sincerely want to thank Michael Serino, Peter Manoogian, Bob Long, and Ken Depatto for being here this evening, and I hope that we answered many of the questions that you have. And please feel free to reach out to any one of us if you still have questions, or to the website that we gave you earlier. It's funny, because I talked earlier about the Essex Street opening and closing all the time. Now it's fully funded, and now we have a feasibility study that town meeting voted on to look into a West Side fire station. We've done some great things over the years. The beautiful middle high school that over 70% of the voters were in favor of. New parks, playgrounds. Town meeting just allocated another $2 million for parks and playgrounds. We're doing great things. All of us tonight are running for Charter Commission. We are not in favor of a Charter Commission, but in case it passes, we want to have a voice at the table. We feel as though it's necessary based on our experience and knowledge of town government. Some changes can be necessary, but as we said this evening, they can be made within our current town government. When you do vote for the commission, you can vote for up to 9 people. So even if you vote no, please vote for up to 9 commission members. I want to thank SCTV for allowing us to have this roundtable discussion tonight, and for Bob Long for bringing this to our attention, and everybody who's here. And I especially want to thank the viewers. It's so important that we have resident involvement, resident participation, and if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out. Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and I do hope that everyone votes. Thank you and good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.